Herein is contained a history of the Tyranid forces in the Milky Way galaxy. The First Tyrannic War. The Sin of Damnation. The gene-stealer-infested spacehawk, Sin of Damnation, is cleansed in a close-fought series of assaults by the Blood Angels' First Company. At the time, none are aware that the gene-stealers are the vanguard of an imminent galactic invasion. The Behemoth arise. A vast fleet of alien bioships enters the galaxy on the eastern fringe. The flight of Malantai. Warned of the Tyranid onslaught by far-flung bands of rangers, the Farseers of Craftworld Malantai opt to remove themselves from Behemoth's approach, whilst there is still time to escape. The death of Tyran. Crippleman's quest. While investigating the mysterious silence of Tyran Primus, Inquisitor Crippleman learns the horror of the alien threat. Crippleman names the aliens Tyranids and races to warn the Imperium. The Sandros Incident. The binary worlds of Sandros offer little resistance to the oncoming Tyranids, and their citizens are slaughtered in the darkness of their own minds. Behemoth advances. Imperial Explorator Fleet Gossar, the world of Helmont and the moons of Rapson, all fall before Behemoth's inexorable advance. The Jaguar. Behemoth falls upon Jaga, pirate base of Captain Blackgit. The Orc cruisers that form Blackgit's fleet launch boarding parties to storm the encroaching bioships. The tide soon turns when the rampaging Orcs awaken the termagants within each ship, which spawn countless broods of termagants. The Orcs are swamped, and the termagants then flood back through the Orcs' own boarding tubes to slaughter the cruisers' crews. Blackgit, sensing defeat as the communications from his fleet abruptly end, attempts to escape by ramming his ship through a lone bio-vessel blocking his path, only to fatally discover it is a starship-sized spore mine. Prandium devoured. Prandium, the jewel of Ultramar, proves an easy and bountiful conquest for the Tyranids. The barren rock left in Behemoth's wake is scarcely recognizable as the once verdant paradise of yore. The Civilized Slaughter. The Chaos Renegade warband known as the Death Shadows musters at Sibari in preparation for a secret strike against Ultramar. They are isolated when the shadow in the warp envelops the system, and their warlord, the sorcerer Malafor, is driven to insanity by the Tyranid psychic presence. Leaderless and in the midst of preparing for an assault of their own, the renegades are unprepared to defend Sibari from the swarm. Though they reap a high tally, the entire warband is annihilated in less than an hour. The Purge of Imgar. The Salamanders conduct a xenocidal campaign to purge the moons of Imgar of gene-stealer infestation. Though the Salamanders suffer heavy casualties, the moons are finally declared scoured, or so they believe. Assault on Calth. Bioships seed Calth with invaders before rejoining the high fleet at Circe. Though few in number, the Tyranids are led by a great Carnifex that wreaks havoc until it is shot in the skull by a Commissar. The Battle for Macragge. The full might of High Fleet Behemoth falls upon Macragge. There it faces the entire Ultramarines chapter. Ultimately, the Tyranids are defeated by the Adeptus Astartes and Macragge saved, but the Ultramarines' victory comes at a terrible cost. The entirety of the chapter's veteran First Company is slain. It is a disaster that will take the Ultramarines centuries to recover from. A monster reawakens. The body of a one-eyed Carnifex is discovered encased in ice on Calth. Though believed to be dead, the creature awakens and butchers everything in its path. Hundreds of Tyranid creatures that have been lurking on Calth's labyrinthine cave systems emerge and flock to the Carnifex's side. As tales of its rampage reach Macragge, the Ultramarines dispatch Sergeant Tellion to hunt down the monster terrorizing Calth's population, a beast they have entitled Old One-Eye. The Belly of the Beast. Mortifactor Space Marines board an isolated hive ship believed to have survived Behemoth's destruction. The Space Marines suffer 90% casualties, but eventually slay the great biovessel. The Old Hunter. Sergeant Terrian of the Ultramarines leads the chapter's next generation of scout recruits on hunt and destroy missions across Ultima Segmentum, seeking remnants of Hive Fleet behemoths. The Amphillion Project, an Imperial task force sent to investigate a covert project which studied captured Tyranid lifeforms, is ambushed and decimated by monstrous alien organisms. Blackthorne's End. The Free-Blade Knight, known as Blackthorne, seeks the head of the Hive tyrant responsible for the fall of the noble house. After smashing through the living wall formed by the monster's bodyguard organisms, Blackthorne finally cleaves his Reaper chainsword through its torso. His oath remains unfulfilled, however, as the monster's ravaged exoskeleton knits back together with frightening speed. Blackthorne screams one final curse upon his nemesis, as the Hive Tyrant sends a devastating pulse of psychic feedback through the neural circuitry of his throne mechanicum, ending the lone hunter's anguish. The Lure. By subtly diverting pilgrim convoys into its path, operatives of the Alpha Legion lure a splinter fleet of behemoths towards the forge world of Amunheim. As the Adeptus Mechanicus diverts its forces to fend off the impending invasion, the traitor Marines launch dozens of raids into now unguarded Imperial territory, spiriting thousands of astropaths away into the void for some dark and unknown purpose. Death comes to Nephilim. A splinter of Hive Fleet behemoth draws ever closer to the galactic core, skirting the western border of the Ultima Segmentum and preying upon remote systems and frontier worlds. Eventually, this tendril reaches the Nephilim sector, where it encounters the Raven Wing of the Dark Angels chapter. The Space Marine's swift harrying tactics, which had proven so vital against mass Tyranid swarms, are ineffective against the towering bio-horrors that the splinter fleet hurls into the fray. Monster against machine. The menace of Nephilim next descends upon the world of Rakhor 9, sworn to the Knights of House Raven. The Knights encounter a foe that has markedly changed its tactics since Behemoth first battered its way across Ultramar. Rather than unleashing vast swarms of lesser organisms, this splinter fleet deploys nodes of advanced organisms, synapse creatures and monstrous warrior forms who are able to fight with far greater autonomy than a typical Tyranid invasion force. At the heart of these Xenos hosts lurks the dread Hive tyrant known as the Nephilim King. Recognizing a dark mirror of their own feudal structure, the Knights of House Raven name the splinter fleet the Court of the Nephilim King. The court adapts with astonishing speed to every tactic and strategy the Knights employ, preying upon their pride and aggression to isolate and destroy individual war machines. Rakhor 9 is lost. The House Raven survivors swear an oath of vengeance upon the Court of the Nephilim King. Bane of Shao-Yur. When a fragment of Behemoth threatens the Eldorei maiden world of Shah-Yur, craft-world Baltan unleashes the engines of Baal. The pristine surface of Shao-Yur plays host to a titanic clash of towering bio-monstrosities and graceful Eldar grav tanks. Stalking through the carnage comes the Tyrannofex that the Eldorei named the Bane of Shah-Yur, its colossal biocannon obliterating enemy vehicles with every peristaltic blast. Their losses mounting, the warriors of Baltan are forced to abandon Shao-Yur to the Great Devourer. Prixius erupts. The world of Prixius and its precious city-sized Prometheum refinery are threatened by a large Tyranid splinter fleet. The 33rd and 91st Mordian Iron Guard are deployed to hold this vital strategic location at all costs. The Mordians hold out for months, refusing to give ground in the face of endless waves of Tyranid assaults. In a cruel twist of fate, a dying bio-titan, blasted apart by barrages of las cannon fire and high-explosive rounds, discharges its bio-cannon directly into a fuel intake valve, setting off a cataclysmic chain reaction. The resultant detonation obliterates the entirety of the 91st Iron Guard. The surviving 33rd Mordian, guarding the perimeter, stubbornly hold out until their ammunition reserves run dry, at which point they are encircled and torn apart. Drakeslayer. On the frontier mining world of Kernov, Watch Sergeant Dramus of the Death Watch slays the subterranean terror known as the Obsidian Drake, ending the Trigon Prime's decades-long reign of terror. The Second Tyrannic War. The Gorgon strikes. High Fleet Gorgon invades the space of the Tau Empire, thrusting the young race into a deadly battle for survival. The Kraken awakes. High Fleet Kraken awakes from its long slumber and invades the eastern fringe. The Diaton, Salen, and Veridian sectors fall silent as the shadow of the warp envelops them. Ravens and Krakens. Originally dispatched to rescue the remaining population of the planet of Eidos, the Raven Guard 4th Company are instead ordered to launch a desperate surgical strike in an attempt to defeat the Tyranid swarm ravaging the world. Terror from the shadows. Over the course of several weeks, the prosperous trading world of Tareska is ravaged by a series of brutal slayings. One by one, the planet's key governmental and military figures are slaughtered by a living shadow that appears as if from nowhere to carve its victims apart. Terrified, the few remaining officials flee to underground bunkers and fortified strongholds, locking themselves away from the world above. Ungoverned and without an organized military to enforce order, Tareska begins to fall apart. At the height of the food riots, the bioships of High Fleet Kraken loom into orbit, obliterating the planet's meager defense fleet. The Martyrdom of Salem. Confronted with the horror of High Fleet Kraken, the monks of the asteroid monastery of Salem choose to poison themselves in their carefully tended ecosystem with necrotizing rotweed, rather than allow their putrefied flesh to be consumed by the advancing Tyranids. The Icar Rebellion. The planet of Icar 4 erupts into rebellion as a faction known as the Brotherhood overthrows the planetary government. Soon after the fighting breaks out, Inquisitor Agmar, dispatched from the inquisitorial fortress of Talassa Prime, leads his battle forces into the planetary capital of Lomas, and discovers that at its heart, the rebellion is harboring a massive gene-stealer infestation. Realizing the forces under his command are insufficient to combat the threat, Agmar sends an urgent plea for assistance. Cleansing of Icar 4. Responding to the Inquisitor's report, the Ultramarines battle barge Octavius arrives in orbit, carrying 2 full companies of Space Marines alongside elements of the newly founded but understrength First Company. The Ultramarines lead the attack into the heart of Icar 4's planetary capital, whilst regiments of the Imperial Guard advance in support. The planet is brought back under the heel of the Imperium within 3 weeks of bitter fighting, and the victors report all trace of the gene-stealer infestation has been cleansed from Icar 4. The price of courage. As part of a centuries-long crusade of penitence, the Lamenters launch an attack against High Fleet Kraken, fighting a series of hopeless battles. Whilst their heroic, slow Krakens advance for a while, the chapter is brought to the edge of extinction by the horrendous casualty rate inflicted upon it. Mortrex overrun. The imperial world of Mortrex is overwhelmed by unrelenting tides of Ripper swarms. The dread beast known as the Parasite of Mortex spawns thousands of these mindless feeder beasts from the still-living bodies of its victims. The jaws of defeat. Kraken sinks its teeth into the mining world of Devlin. The Imperial Guard's carefully prepared defenses prove useless against assaults from beneath by tunneling Tyranid creatures, spearheaded by a monster known to the populace as the Red Terror. Due to the sacrifice of Lamenter's Space Marines, the Tyranids are held back long enough to evacuate a few million colonists before Devlin is consumed. The death of Sartha. Kraken invades Sartha, homeworld of the size of the Emperor, who are overrun by the Tyranids. The chapter is decimated, and the few survivors reluctantly evacuate to Miral Prime to regroup with their off-world forces. Mystery of Adri's Hope. A refugee ship from Devlin arrives in orbit around Adri's Hope, ominously silent. Those investigating the ship find it to be an abattoir, all aboard mercilessly butchered. Though a breach of quarantine is suspected to have allowed a Tyranid organism to get aboard, nothing is found. 3 weeks later, all contact is lost with Adri's Hope. Goeth's Last Stand. Princeps Goeth of the Imperator Titan Metallum Olympus single-handedly manages to hold back a tendril of High Fleet Kraken on the ashen-choked plains of Horst Prime. The mighty war engine is finally destroyed when a brood of Hierophant Bio-Titans pounce on the noble machine like a pack of wild dogs. In the frenzied attack, Metallum Olympus's plasma reactor is breached, and the resultant explosion vaporizes everything for a mile around, leaving behind a crater that is still visible from orbit, a testament to the sacrifice needed to fight the Tyranids. The defense of Miro. Imperial Guard regiments and the Space Marines of the size of the Emperor chapter barely hold out against Tyranids on the death world of Miro Prime. Against the onslaught, the Imperium's forces are forced to fall back to a huge rock mess, known locally as the Giant's Coffin, to make a defiant last stand. Here they fight daily against raging hordes of Tyranids. Despite their heroics, the sides of the Emperor suffer catastrophic casualties. Faced with the total destruction of their chapter, the Space Marines reluctantly retreat, leaving Miro Prime to the Kraken. The Trophy Hunter. Eager to add to his burgeoning collection of skulls, Rogak's Bloodhand, warlord of a World Eater's warband of Chaos Space Marines, leads his maniacal host into a headlong attack against a tendril of Hive Fleet Kraken. To strike a blow. Though too late to save the rain-drenched bastion world of Eorxia from a splinter of Hive Fleet Kraken, Space Marines of the Death Watch successfully plot nucleonic charges within the innards of the massive Tyranid bioship at the center of the fleet as it feeds upon the dying planet. Upon the charge's detonation, the entire splinter fleet falls into disorder. The Fall of Handen. The Eldorei craft world of Handen is subjected to a series of massive Tyranid attacks. The once mighty craft world musters every warrior at its disposal, living and dead, and is soon embroiled in desperate fighting against wave after wave of Tyranid organisms. After a long and bloody battle, Handen is saved, though the cost is unbearably high. Within the craft world's halls, the dead now greatly outnumber the living. Little more than a remnant of its former glory, Handen remains as a solemn testament to the hive mind's hunger. The Kraken strikes. Several tendrils of Hive Fleet Kraken converge on the world of Icar 4. The full might of the Ultramarines answers Icar 4's call to arms, and once again, the hive mind responds by unleashing the Swarmlord. The experience of Ultramarine veterans from First Tyrannic War proves decisive, and slowly but surely, Kraken's grip on Icar 4 is severed, and the Tyranids are scoured from the world. The Splinters of Kraken. Following the twin defeats at Icar 4 and Handen, the scattered remnants of Hive Fleet Kraken flee towards the galactic core, driving well within the defensive lines drawn to combat the Tyranid threat. Though the Kraken as a single entity is defeated, those splinter fleets varying in size from a few dozen to a few hundred bioships continue to be a dire threat, preying upon ill-defended worlds and vulnerable supply lines. The Anvil. Forewarned of the approach of a large splinter tendril of the Hive Fleet Kraken, the Imperial Fists turn the world of Hughen's Anvil into a killing field of trip mines, razor wire, and interwoven gun emplacements. As the Tyranids swarm forth, the Space Marines cut them down with blistering fusillades of bolter fire. Soon, the battlefield is littered with great piles of Xenos dead, and the orbiting bioships slowly retreat into the void, pursued by battle barges of the Sons of Dawn. It is only after fleeing Tyranid vessels are rounded up and eliminated that the Imperial Fists receive distress calls from the neighbouring system of Politiskeen. Soon, the disturbing truth dawns upon the Space Marines. Hive Fleet Kraken had split its fleet in two before making landfall upon Hughen's Anvil, and its surviving Xenos vessels were at that very moment descending upon several undefended worlds. Deadly cargo. Drukhari corsairs of the Flayed Skull Cabal returned to Cormorra with valuable cargo. Several dormant lictors, gathered from the burned-out remnants of a Kraken bioship. Before the crew can sell these priceless specimens, the Tyranid life forms awaken from their slumber, breaking loose and falling upon their captors in a gore-splattering frenzy. Temporarily sated, the chameleonic horrors slip away into the underwarrens of Cormorra. More of the Megalodon. Born from the ashes of the Kraken, the splinter fleet known as Megalodon terrorizes Imperial space, spreading terror and confusion before it like a bow wave. Secreted aboard cargo vessels and interstellar transports, the Megalodon's vanguard organisms spread like a cancer through sector after sector, birthing fanatical cults, assassinating planetary governors, and sowing the seeds of discord and mayhem. The crystal mining belt of Hydros 12 is one of the first Imperial holdings to feel the Megalodon's maw close around it. In the space of a single week, the Splinter Fleet's lictors slaughter every single void miner in the complex. Death in the webway. Utilizing illusions, feints, and the sacrifice of an oblivious Imperial battle fleet, Harlequins of the Reaper's mirth lure a splinter of Hive Fleet Kraken away from vulnerable Exilite worlds and deep into the webway. There, amidst the maddening pathways and non-Euclidean geometry of that mysterious realm, they exterminate the Tyranids, though the mask pays a high price in blood for its victory. The Grand Coalition. An isolated tendril of the Kraken reaches towards the Tau-sept world of Delith, a prosperous trading hub frequented by countless alien races. Watercast diplomats make earnest pleas to their trading partners, imploring them to lend their naval strength to a coalition armada that will intercept the Tyranid menace. This fleet sails forth and is almost entirely destroyed. Fortunately, the Tau's own losses are comparatively minimal, and precious time is bought for Delith to ready its defences. Season of Unrest. Across the Ultima Segmentum, reports emerge of previously docile worlds erupting in violent riots and uprisings. This unrest coincides with the emergence of several previously unidentified Tyranid splinter fleets, though Imperial High Command deems this little more than unfortunate happenstance. The Purging of Gossar Quintus. Death Guard chaplain Orton Cassius leads a kill team to the mining world of Gossar Quintus, and there encounters a cult that worships the Tyranids as a saviour race. Cassius and his warriors slay the Genestealer Patriarch at the heart of the cult, but discover the ruling Trist dynasty of Gossar Quintus has spread its demented faith across the Segmentum and possibly beyond. The implications for the Imperium are staggering and grim beyond measure. The Third Tyrannic War. The Coils of Pythos. The Red Talon Space Marines hold the fortress world of Orask on the edge of the Ghoul Stars from an invading splinter of Hive Fleet Pythos. The Leviathan arises. Hive Fleet Leviathan strikes at the underbelly of the Imperium, sinking its tendrils into Segmentum Tempestus, Ultima, and Solar. Slaughter at St. Casperlan. Blood stains the cloisters as Leviathan invades the shrine world of St. Casperlan. The world's leaders are slain and terrorized by a Tyranid assassin and, riven with panic, the planet's defense forces are easy prey. The only true resistance comes from a force of Sisters of Battle, who hold out bravely for weeks, but even they are overwhelmed when Deathleaper lures Trigons to excavate beneath their holy bastion, and swarms of Hormagaunts use the tunnels in their wake to flood the fortification. The loss of St. Casperlan is a blow to the Imperium, and a manifest warning that faith alone is no defense against the Tyranids. The Swarmlord Returns. Leviathan's swiftest victories occur along a spine of worlds in the Hodor sector. In the span of a single year, the Swarmlord oversees the absorption of dozens of worlds, including Talon, homeworld the Storm Falcon Space Marine chapter. The Folly of Pride. The supposedly impenetrable Iron Warrior's fortress world of Forgefane falls to the Tyranids in less than a week. Battle of Bloodstar. Battlefleet Ultima concludes a devastating campaign against Leviathan when it is ambushed and intermailed by two separate Tyranid fleets in the Bloodstar sector, and the celebrated flagship Imperial Glory is destroyed. A world abandoned. The Adeptus Mechanicus abandoned the world of Tesla Prime, choosing to use its military forces to bolster Gryphon 4, one of the principal forge worlds in the galaxy, in preparations for a defiant stand against Hive Fleet Leviathan. Defense of Tarsus Ultra. Leviathan invades Tarsus Ultra as the first snows of winter begin to fall. Despite the presence of the Ultramarines and the Mortifactors, the tide of battle turns against the armies of the Imperium due to the Tyranids' sheer numbers. Tarsus Ultra is saved not by force of arms alone, but through a biological plague created by Magos Locard, and delivered into the very heart of the Hive Fleet by Uriel Ventris of the Ultramarines' 4th Company. All attempts to replicate a similar contagion have thus far resulted in failure. Mass Exterminatus. Inquisitor Crippleman orders the extermination of all life on hundreds of worlds to create a cordon to slow the advance of Hive Fleet Leviathan. The battle for Gryphon 4. Skies darken with bioships over the forge world of Gryphon 4, home of the War Griffons, Titan Legion, combined with the planet's Skitarii legions and the military force of Tesla Prime. The Adeptus Mechanicus prepare for war. When Tyranid warrior organisms reach the planet's surface, a battle of truly epic scale unfolds. The landscapes of metal and girder run black with ichor, as heavy weaponry takes a fearsome toll on the invaders. Within an hour, the ground shakes to the tread of titans, emerging from their cathedral hangars to engage the huge monstrosities stalking through the Manufactorum. However, for every bio-titan that falls to the fury of the Mechanicus guns, one of the Imperium's giant war machines is torn apart by enormous bladed claws, volleys of bio-cannon fire and gouts of hissing pyro-acid. The ground reverberates to the tread of dueling giants for days on end, the Adeptus Mechanicus and the swarms of the hive mind both refusing to give in. Despite the resolve of the tech priests and the toll their machines reap on the Tyranids, the Tyranid invasion gathers pace. Slowly but surely, the defenders of Gryphon are overwhelmed by the unending swarm, and even the mighty titans of the War Griffons are brought crashing down. Within days, the world is scoured. Though the loss of Gryphon 4 is a calamity of unprecedented scale for the Imperium, the Tyranids are uncaring for their victory, and Hive Fleet Leviathan simply moves on in search of fresh feeding grounds. A bloody harvest. A lone bioship launches an invasion against the planet Stormvald. The Phoenix Lord Morgan Ra stands alone against the swarm and triumphs. The Fall of Shadowbrink. Hive Fleet Leviathan descends upon the cathedral world of Shadowbrink, annihilating the prey world's defenders. The sheer scale of the carnage rips open the ancient demonic rift, the legions of warp-spawned horrors boiling forth to fall upon the Tyranid swarms. Unwilling to abandon the reserves of biomass it has gathered, the Leviathan unleashes its full might against the demon aggressors. Though the hive mind is unused to fighting creatures of the Empyrean, it adapts to these new foes with startling speed. Vast hordes of Hormigons and Termagants clash with legions of bloodletters and plague-bearers, as colossal bio-titans and greater demons stalk through the fray. Ultimately, even this vast demonic host cannot beat back the murderous swarms of the Tyranids. One by one, the demons of Shadowbrink are slain, and their raging spirits banished to the warp. Stuck in the Craw. Hive Fleet Leviathan fights the Imperial Guard regiments of Catachan on the death world of Yorn 5. Though outnumbered, the Catachan jungle fighters prove stubbornly resourceful, and so the Tyranids advance long enough for additional Imperial Guard and Space Marine reinforcements to arrive planetside and strike a vital blow against the Hive Fleet. Crippleman's Gambit. Crippleman undertakes a dangerous mission on the labyrinthine world of Carpathia, leading several specially equipped Deathwatch teams into the heart of the planet's caverns. Crippleman succeeds in capturing a live gene-stealer brood in a stasis field, though many of the Space Marines die in the attempt. The Crusader thwarted. High Marshal Helbrecht of the Black Templars, in pursuit of the Orc warlord Gazgul Thraka, leads a fleet forged from 15 Space Marine chapters against a splinter tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan, which is barring his path. Despite employing every strategy employed at his disposal, Helbrecht's fleet is continually forced to fall back before the Tyranid advance. His mounting ire matches the rising numbers of the Space Marine lost to the Leviathan. Perdition's Flame. Crippleman and his allies board the Space Hulk Perdition's Flame and lodge his crutch of captured gene-stealers within. Crippleman then orders the destruction of the Moon of Geist, diverting the Space Hulk's path into the sector-wide Orc Empire of Octarius. The Octarium War. Octaria burns as Tyranids and Orcs engage in bloody battle across the sector. Hive Fleet Leviathan gluts itself upon vast deposits of biomass, even as more and more greenskins rush to the front lines, dawned by the promise of a proper fight. Ultimately, Both violent species prosper in this hellscape of unending violence. Inquisitor Crippleman's plan may have brought the Imperium valuable time, but it also forges Leviathan into a far stronger and more formidable foe. Gorgo's End. A tendril of Leviathan reaches from beneath the galactic plane to encircle the prosperous agri-world of Gorgo. Invaluable due to its precious yield of spider vine, Gorgo is protected by a garrison of the Cadian 23rd, highly experienced and well-equipped warriors. Yet even these veterans are unprepared for the nightmare that approaches. Battle cannons and anti-air missiles thin the oncoming waves of Tyranid organisms, but the Cadians are quickly forced back to the Obsidian Line, a defensive ring of Imperial bastions. It is then that Leviathan unleashes its siege-breaking swarms. Brood lords and their gene sailor packs accompanied by massive biological battering rams. These specialized organisms smash great breaches into the Obsidian Line, forcing their way inside and massacring the defenders. Within a matter of days, Gorgo falls. The Battle of Baal. The single largest concentration of Hive Fleet Leviathan yet recorded descends upon Baal, homeworld of the Blood Angels. The galaxy burns. Summoned into being by a series of chaos-engineered catastrophes, the colossal warp storm known as the Great Rift tears the galaxy in half. Demons pour into real space, and entire civilizations are devoured. Swallowed by violent etheric tempests, many tendrils of the Tyranids' hive fleets are dragged into the Immaterium. Most are lost forever in the roiling madness of that realm, but others are vomited back into reality thousands of light years away. Return of the Primark. As the Great Rift tears open reality, empiric storms ravage the Baal system. Upon Baal itself, the battle between Blood Angels and Tyranids rages on, but the vast Leviathan fleet orbiting Baal is pulled apart by empiric storms and devoured by the madness of the warp. Demons invade the moon of Baal Prime, annihilating a great portion of Leviathan's invasion swarms. They are led by Kabanda, ancient nemesis of the Blood Angels. The Bloodthirster slaughters the entire Tyranid host upon Baal Prime, and piles their skulls high in the shape of his dread sigil, leaving a chilling message for his hated foes before vanishing back into the warp. As the empiric insanity begins to wane, Reboot Gilliman's indomitous crusade arrives at Baal, assisting the few surviving Blood Angels in the extermination of the isolated Tyranid ground forces. Baal is saved, but at the cost of almost the entire Blood Angels chapter. Scattered to the stars. Leviathan's enormous Baal invasion fleet is torn into 1,000 fragments and spat across the vast expanse of the galaxy. Several hundred bioships tumble out of the void into the heart of the Maelstrom, and there fall upon the piratical fleet of Huron Blackheart, master of the Red Corsairs. Another, larger host emerges in the midst of the Velis system, fearfully close to the heart of Segmentum Solar. Garbled distress calls received from Velis Prime speak of frenzied, shrieking swarms of Tyranids covered in bizarre fungoid growths and wielding previously unrecorded bioweapons. It is unknown how many more of these splinter fleets survived the cataclysm at Baal intact. Fury of Leviathan. In the wake of its defeat at Baal, Leviathan launches a vast offensive across the southern border of the Segmentum Solar. The Tyranid assault reaches as far into the galactic core as Bloodfall, homeworld of the Red Wolves. Recently reinforced with Primark Space Marines, the Red Wolves prove stubborn and deadly foes, until Leviathan unleashes its most fearsome weapons. Broods of monstrous bio-titans spawned in the brutal furnace of the Octarium War and glutted upon potent greenskin biomass. Diverted from the ongoing war with the Orcs, these monsters are formidable siege organisms. With colossal hooked forelimbs, they smash great rents in the Red Wolves' fortifications, and swarms of gene stealers flock into the breaches. Their fortress monastery hopelessly compromised. Their loss is horrific. The Red Wolves are forced to retreat, securing vital stocks of gene seed and evacuating upon their remaining battle barges. The Last War. As Leviathan pushes ever forwards towards Holy Terror, Primark Guilliman dispatches dozens of newly founded Primaris chapters to the front lines of the Third Tyrannic War.